Sorry. Technology is still not my strongest suit.
Dude, amazing. Amazing intro. Oh, thank you. I've been thinking about this like for days, and especially like this morning thinking of just upon awakening going like, today's the day I meet Damien. And you just broke the ice for me in such a beautiful way. Fuck. Thank you so much, man. So nice to meet you.
You too. And thank you for doing this.
Oh, are you kidding? This is my great pleasure. I swear on everything. I mean, my daughter is she's never told me to tell someone hi in any of the podcasts. She said, please tell Damien I said hi and that I'm a fan.
Tell her I said thank you and boomerang.
Nice, man. Oh, so where are we? Where's this room?
I'm in the Hudson Valley, slightly about 2 hours above New York City, 2 hours north of New York City. Yeah.
Okay, right on. How long have you been there?
I think we're working on our third year now.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. We went from Manhattan to New Orleans, and then I realized I don't want to be in the city anymore.
Yeah.
So now we live up in the mountains.
How old are you now?
I will be 52 this year.
Oh, excellent, man. What was it like turning 50? Is there any trip around it?
Yeah, that's a weird thing. Nobody's ever asked me that, but it was kind of intense, actually. I didn't think anything about it leading up to 50. It was just another birthday. I don't really celebrate them or, have parties or anything like that. I usually think of them as days of like contemplation, looking back on your life and where you are. And then when I turned 50, I woke up that morning and this was something I hadn't considered, nothing about this. All of a sudden I woke up and I thought, your life is more than half over. Yeah. Maybe 2/3 over. Yeah. So you better pick up the pace a little bit if there's stuff you still want to do while you're still, somebody said one time your 50s are the childhood of old age. And I thought, that's how I'm going to start treating it.
Man, it feels that way. I'm approaching. It's in the.
But it was kind of a heavy feeling, like realizing more of your life is behind you than there is ahead of you.
That is wild. I mean, coming from you too, it's just wild to hear the perspective, I mean, how many lives does it feel so far that you've lived? And I'm not trying to be cute. Like how many?
No, you're hitting dead on so far. Like I'll do podcasts or something with people sometimes, and they'll ask me about, minute, details from like the case or prison or something like that. And I'll try to explain to them, that wasn't me. That person did not survive that situation. That person died in there. When I try to talk about those kinds of things, it's like either trying to remember somebody else's memories or trying to remember scenes from a past life. That's really what it's like. And I think also if you really, really intensely engage in any kind of spiritual practice that makes you really grow and change and evolve. I think there are times if you hit it hard enough and are focused enough on it, I think there are times when you will look back over a period of 2 weeks and realize I'm not the same person I was then anymore. So it's almost like there's no way to answer that other than to say a lot of lives.
Yeah. Man, what a beautiful, of course, tragic, but just incredible showing of the potential of a human being in one life to not only live all those lives, but to have the kind of attitude that you have now and the joy, And I want to ask you all about it, of course. I mean, I'd like to cover topics it seems like it's very obvious in the Paradise Lost series that there's a spiritual awakening happening with you after you're imprisoned and your next shots. And there's sort of I feel like there's a shot of you with a mala at a certain point. Yes, and I noticed this. I'm like, something's happening in there, Yep. And
Yes.
it grows and grows. It seems to grow throughout all three of the series and in West of Memphis, of course. And thanks immediately to our friend Amy Berg for connecting us.
Yes.
Really
I actually,
appreciate it.
while I was in there, the mala was given to me. I received ordination in the Rinzai tradition of Japanese Buddhism. It was like the tradition that used to train the samurai. I had a teacher who would come back and forth from Japan, and that's where the mala came from.
Wow. And how did you connect with him while incarcerated?
Okay, so whenever you're executed, the only person that's allowed to be with you is what the prison calls your spiritual advisor. Like you can't have family or friends or anything like that. And when I first walked into the door of the prison, this guy gave me like this big manila envelope, and it was full of things like stamped envelopes so that I could write my family and let them know where I was. There was like a bar of soap in it, things you would need just to survive like the first few days you're in prison. And this guy, he would eventually go on to be executed, but before he did, he became a priest in the Rinzai Zen tradition, and his teacher was the head abbot of a 300-year-old monastery in Japan, and that's who was with him when he was executed. Well, after his execution, they let the Zen abbot come back to death row and walk down the row and talk to anybody that wanted to talk to him and tell us like what the guy's last words had been, how he held up during the execution, stuff like that. We start talking and he gives me his address. We start corresponding. Eventually he becomes my teacher too, and then started coming back and forth from Japan to the prison to teach me.
What's that first letter like, getting one back from him?
It was like oxygen when you've been holding your breath for a long time. Like I cannot ever make people understand how dark it is in prison. Like even if you've seen a million TV shows and movies and all this kind of stuff about prison, it's still not on the same level of actually feeling it. Like walking in there, it feels like you are buried alive in the darkest, vilest place on the face of the earth. And every single interaction I had with that man was like suddenly receiving a ray of light while laying in a coffin.
Wow. Fuck. Have you ever said it that way before?
No.
Dude, that was so beautiful. Insane. It feels like it was prepared. It's so good.
Nope.
But I realize that it's not also because I say things like that at times too. And it's like you watch it come out and it's like, wow, that was really grouped well, but beautiful imagery. I'm curious right now in this Zen tradition, if the choice, and this is just an abstract question, this is like on the spot curiosity. In this tradition, would it almost be preferable to have, if there were a choice to be executed by the blade rather than what they're offering, and by somebody maybe even your teacher or something like that? If it had, would that be an interesting scenario in this? And would that be, if that choice was an option, do you think your friend in prison who was executed would have chosen that?
I've never thought of that before, but I think that would be 1,000,000 times more preferable. I mean, you've got the choice between dying at the hand of someone who loves you and is ushering you onto the next stage of your journey, or dying at the hand of someone who hates you and will celebrate whenever you take your last breath. Right. I would take the first option 1,000,000 times over. No
kidding. It's incredible too about having that you can have a spiritual advisor as your contact, or somebody that you can have contact with. If you have a good one of those, you could feel your family the rest of your life. You could feel love the rest of your life. You could feel the interconnectedness to all beings with one great teacher. And so it's an incredible thing that actually it seems like it's stripped down to nothing, only just one person. But that person, if it's an important person like that, can connect you to everybody.
Absolutely. And it ties into so many different things. Whenever you said that, it's like my brain started spinning off in all these different directions. But it's also like one of the things that I discovered in there is what I think of as the secret of life, at least for me. And what that secret was to have a mission or have a purpose. And you're not, it's something that we have to look for. Most people, it's not just going to be something that's dropped in their lap or, something they automatically know. A lot of times we're going to have to do things that, we don't even think about. Maybe a friend talks you into taking a dance class one time and you've never in your life given a thought to taking a dance class, and you take it and you're like, I love this. Once you get there, you're like, I want to do this. And it like sets you on fire. I think, and it gives you that sense of purpose. When you have a sense of purpose in life, I can't remember who it was that said it. It may have been, what's his name? Weasel, the guy who wrote, or was it Viktor Frankl? I can't even remember.
Oh, one of these guys.
It gets mangled. Yeah. One of those guys, he was talking about how, like, if you have a sense of purpose, it makes it possible for you to survive almost any situation.
Right.
Because you've got like something to keep moving towards.
Right. And life is mind.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
And so, mind, and God, that's one of the things I absolutely want to talk to you about. But so prison awakening, identity, alchemy, mythology, forgiveness, projection of the public and service, and also the story that you're hoping to be told now about your life that is not being told, maybe. Yes. I'd like to cover some of those things.
Of course.
Going to the beginning, you're introduced in the doc, at least, as somebody that was playing around with magic early on, and that's with a K at the end. And my curiosity was that interest a long interest, or was it sort of teenage rebellion that ended up becoming a deeper interest with the circumstances of your life?
I think it started off as rebellion, honestly, just because I was, came from a part of the country that is like hardcore fundamentalist. If I would have stayed in that area, I would have never in my life seen anything like a Buddhist temple or a Hindu temple or a Taoist organization, none of that sort of stuff. Yeah. Or even, magic, right. Western Hermeticism, alchemy. Mm-hmm. I would have never come in contact with any of those things. So I think it was kind of like and I looked at that life, from a very young age. I looked at my parents. I looked at my environment, like the neighborhood I lived in, everybody that I would come in contact with. And it all seemed like everybody was living these really hard, dead-end sorts of lives, where they're working jobs that they hated every single day, and they're just living for the day when they can finally retire. And once they retire, they die pretty quick because they don't do anything but, watch game shows during the day or whatever it was. Right. And I just felt this feeling well up in me, this like horror of that. This complete and absolute lack of mission, lack of purpose, lack of meaning. Right. And it made me want to turn towards everything that wasn't. So I think that's what initially made me start looking towards magic. It was almost like a refuting of that life.
Like kids getting into punk rock or like to rebel against their family. Yeah. Okay, cool. So it was kind of that. And it was like, this will fuck with them a little bit, or like, this is the thing they're not into. And I want to go toward that because you want to individuate from this collective.
Yes. Yeah. But I think in a way it's almost, I think people go through this stage, and I think it can be detrimental if you stay stuck in the stage. One is the teenage rebellion stage. Even if you're 40, you can still be in that state of teenage rebellion. But the other one was building an identity out of a religion or a belief system. I am whatever it is. I am a Buddhist. I am a magician. I am an alchemist, whatever it is. When you fall into that trap, then you have mistaken the vehicle for the destination. Absolutely. Like none of these things are destinations. We're not supposed to live our lives as Buddhists. We're supposed to be Buddhas. We're not supposed to live our lives as, I am an alchemist. We are supposed to live our lives as if we are the alchemical experiment.
Yes.
all of these sorts of things. So eventually I would, when I started to realize that and learn those sorts of things, I would leave that teenage rebellion stage behind. And ultimately, what I realized is you're doing the exact same thing when you practice alchemy in the Western tradition as you are when you practice Taoism or Buddhism or any of the Eastern traditions. It's the exact same thing, only viewed through a Western lens.
Right. And explain that. I know what you're talking about, but for people who might not, I'm figuring it as the vehicle for harnessing change and or something like that. But how would you describe it?
Well, I think that's the early levels, like the higher levels. What you're supposed to be aiming at is awakening. And by awakening, what I'm referring to is the direct firsthand experience that you are not who or what you're not Jamie. You're not Damien. Like, you are the field of consciousness which lies behind that, and that arises from, and that will one day dissolve back into. So that's the ultimate goal of these. Well, I won't even say ultimate goal, but that's a huge part of it. The ultimate goal is coming back down into, it's like the final picture and the ox herding pictures in Zen. It's not the monk, ascending into heaven or dissolving into infinity or any of these things. It's returning back to the world with helping hands.
Right.
Like, you're no longer focused up there. You're focused here. You realize this is the rest of your path, that you are supposed to descend back down into the world. I think Beethoven described it the absolute best I've ever heard anybody say it. He said, like, the highest ambition that we could possibly have is to ascend as closely as we can to divinity, gather its rays, and then disseminate them out to mankind.
Wow.
Yes.
Holy
We're all going to do that in different ways, right? Like, Beethoven did it through music. Some people may do it through, anything you can do in this world could be a vehicle for doing that. Yeah. And I think that's like the ultimate goal that we are trying to achieve here. But we have to go through this process of getting ourselves ready for that, of making ourselves, in a state where we can receive that. So a lot of what we're doing in the Western tradition, especially alchemy, think of it like the alchemical process means to take something, break it apart into its component pieces, work on strengthening, refining, and purifying each one of those pieces, and then putting them all back together into something that is greater than it was when it started. Mm-hmm. We do that metaphorically. We use the elements as metaphors for this process. Like when we're talking about earth, we're talking about our hardcore physical bodies. Right. So a lot of people in spirituality try to escape that. They're like, the body doesn't matter, the world doesn't matter. No, that's the first place you start. And it's also the very last place where you're going to come back to when you start the cycle over again.
That's right.
So working on, when you're working on earth, for example, in addition to like all the meditations and breath work and stuff like that, you're supposed to start changing your life in a way that's going to allow you to be in greater harmony with that element. So for example, that would mean maybe you realize, what, I really shouldn't be smoking cigarettes, and you quit smoking. Or you start to think, I really should take up an exercise routine or change my diet a little. Maybe I should start spending more time in nature. So all of those things correspond to earth. And then you do the same thing with the other elements. For air, it would be our intellect, our mind, like understanding how the mind works, what we're feeding it with, and changing that so that, whatever we're taking in, you are what you eat, you are what you consume, changing that sort of stuff to refine air, the intellect. And then the same thing with water, which is the emotions, and the same thing with fire, which is like our life force, our will. Right. So the way you would do it with fire, for example, and I realize this is long-winded.
No, please. This is great.
Okay. So the way you do it with fire, since fire is your actual life force and your ambition and your drive and your creativity and all those different things, the work of fire is to look at your life and figure out, where am I hemorrhaging this energy pointlessly? Where am I losing my life force and gaining nothing back from it? Is it doom scrolling on social media or, a million other things that it could be? And to start pruning off those little tributaries where you're losing all this life force so that you can start channeling them into doing what your purpose or mission is, more effectively here on earth.
Right. And this ties in with the Chinese astrology at the time right now with the fire horse. And,
yes,
and that fire horse being something I'm just learning about it, but the idea that whatever we haven't, whatever that's outstanding, an outstanding debt where we're giving away some of these energies or this intellect or life force energies, that we're to claim that back and start directing it in the most intentional way, in the ways that we feel most speak to us in our life mission, like what you were talking about.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's the work of alchemy.
Mm-hmm. And I love what you were saying earlier about it prior to going into the elements, just that, there's a changeless state in us. There's a perfect state. It's never changing. And that is the awake, state that is obscured by thinking and identity and, psychology and all that. It's obscured, but there's this changeless state that we're trying to return to that's always been pristine and perfect, and actually is the way it's been described, at least, is perfect from the beginning, deathless and birthless.
Yes.
So all this, changing and stuff, you're right. It's not the ultimate destination. It's the vehicle, but to bring us back to our original state.
What you just said is like one of the core secrets of alchemy that we're supposed to figure out along this process. Like they say, like if you read all the old texts, like the really old or like source materials of alchemy, you'll find that they say that one of the aims of alchemy is immortality.
Right.
That doesn't mean that your individual self is going to live forever.
Right.
It means realizing I'm not the individual self. I'm already immortal. Like this field of consciousness always was. It's what Jesus meant when he said, or not only Jesus talking about, what did he say? Like before Abraham, I am. And then that's what he's describing.
Yes.
Exact same thing. Or even the burning bush.
Or even the kingdom of heaven is within.
Same thing.
Like that's it. It's not in the external world. It's within.
Yes.
Yeah. God, that's incredible. Okay, so would you say then, how we all start as posers? I mean, when I was young, when I was your age, when you're being prosecuted, I was into Metallica also. And, but I was just a poser at everything. We start out as posers. We start out trying to emulate something that looks like it will be a vehicle for change or individuality. And then maybe there's something to that thing, or maybe not. Maybe it's a frivolous thing and it drops off. But the ones that music has carried with me throughout my life, and the idea of service and all those things, they found new vehicles down the line. But so you start out in magic in this rebellion thing, and then where does it start to get serious with magic and spiritual practice? Is it while the trial is going on, or after you're prosecuted?
After that would be the work that I started to undertake when I was in prison. Like in the beginning, going back to like the poser stage for a second, it's like most people I think who are in the poser stage in magic or alchemy, the only times they're really going to like do anything, like really commit to a hardcore, like real practice, not reading about it on Facebook or watching videos of it or any of that stuff, but really doing it is the same thing that makes people start praying or anything else. We fall on hard times in a way that we can't do anything about for ourselves. Right. That's when we start to look for some kind of help.
Yeah.
That was part of what happened when I was in prison. Like, I think especially for Westerners, Zen is an incredibly slow process. Incredibly slow.
It's the slowest.
Yes. Alchemy is probably the fastest.
Oh, nice.
So, but what happened was I thought, I started to think at one point, for a while, I used to say, okay, I'm not getting anything out of just sitting here on this cushion. Like, what's supposed to be happening? I'm not, I don't feel any different or anything else. So what's supposed to be happening here? Is anything really taking place? Something was happening, but it's so subtle and it's not what you're expecting. We want fireworks with this stuff.
Right.
And when
we're used to rewards that are obvious.
Yep. That we know when it's happening.
Right.
But with some of these practices, you don't know when it's happening. You look back in hindsight and realize, oh, I changed a lot while that was happening. But a lot of times you don't even know it while you're going through it.
Yeah.
So I used to say, I reached a point where I thought all of spirituality is bullshit. This is no different from religion, where you just are told something and you're supposed to say, okay, I accept it and I believe it. Now I'm just going to wait to die.
Yeah.
So I thought, and if that's the case, then I'm not going to waste my life on any of this stuff anymore. But before I quit, before I throw all of this shit away, I am going to give magic or alchemy one last crack, but this time I am going to approach it the same way that I have Zen. Because when I was practicing Zen, I was sitting for hours a day, like I felt like I was struggling, like I didn't know, what enlightenment even is.
Oh,
I just
man, it must have been so
it.
painful to do that by yourself. I mean, on top of the pain that you're already in of being in prison, but like also not having the guidance and having the willingness to sit there for hours, but no guidance and wondering if you're doing it right. That sounds like its own like sort of subtle torture.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I would be sitting on that mat thinking, am I doing this right? Am I getting something wrong here?
Right.
But I thought I'm going to approach alchemy the same way that I have Zen, and I'm going to pour my whole life force into doing this.
What's it like getting the materials in? Like, how are you able to study? Like, were you able to get books? Like, I don't know if you've read, I'm sure you've read the Kabbalion, which is one of my favorite books of all time, top 3 books of all time, showed me the secrets of the mechanics of the universe,
Yes.
Yes. How are you able to get materials that can even fortify or even initiate this process? And what's that like?
Fortunately, by that point, most of the world, I think like maybe the first 2, at least 1, maybe 2 of the Paradise Lost documentaries have come out.
Okay.
So people all over the world are learning about the case, and they're wanting to know what can they do to help. And and it wouldn't be just legally, like what can we do to help you out with the case? But some people would do things like put together a wish list of books. They would ask me, okay, what books do you want? And I would put together a wish list of books, and they would post them on the internet, and then people would just start sending them to me. Wow. So I was very, very fortunate in that regard. And
what's that right there? Just before, and I don't want to throw this off, but I'm so curious about that feeling. You're what most imagine, and it's very easy to imagine, bereft of affection in prison. Mm-hmm. So feeling the affection in words on paper of people's letters and all that, what's it like experiencing? I imagine this is a love almost that besides maybe even your parents, which I don't know what that relationship's like or not, whether you got unconditional love or that type of thing, but this unconditional love where you don't have to do anything, but people love you and it's unconditional. It doesn't matter what you do for the rest of your life. They love you and they're wanting to send you things. What's that feeling like, if you can even take us back there to describing feeling the love of strangers, the invisible audience?
Once again, it's like one of those rays of light. There are so many things. I compare like everything I went through, like the days of my life, I compare it almost to like a chain with all of these different links. All of these different people form links, all of these different experiences and circumstances. Like it was like the universe almost created this perfect storm in my life to not only destroy the early version of me and the early version of the life that I lived, but then to also like allow me to be reborn in a completely different form. And if you took out one link in that chain, one person, one thing, the whole thing would have collapsed. Right. So it makes you see divinity at what it makes you see the hand of God moving behind everything in this world. It truly does. And when you see that, it gives you a kind of comfort that nothing else ever will.
Wow. And it's just in the ether. I mean, it doesn't even need to be physically represented. You're walking around with that. The kingdom of heaven also, it starts to be within rather than without.
Yes. There's a weird thing like in the martial art that I started with, my first martial art that I got a black belt in is Tang Soo Do. It's Korean karate is what it is. Oh,
okay. Was that in prison or out?
Out.
Okay,
after
gotcha.
I got out. Yeah, that's like a whole different story. Like people think that, once you get out of prison, it's going to be like happily ever after, you've reached a finish line. When I got out, it was as hard or harder than when I went in. It destroyed me. Getting out of prison destroyed me to the core of my being. And martial arts were what allowed me to, once again, start building my life around this structure that started to help me come up out of that state again. Absolutely.
So this is you're talking about the institutionalized scenario, sort of like where it's become the cocoon or the prison has become so familiar that you're ripped from that familiarity, even though you're free?
Not exactly. It's really hard to describe, but I'll give you like one piece of it. One tiny piece would be that when I got out of prison in 2011, I had never seen a cell phone. I had never seen the internet. I had never owned a credit card. I had never driven a car, owned a car, any of these sorts of things. So it was almost like the day I walked out of prison, it's like I was taken to a different planet and dropped off and expected to figure out how to survive. And it destroyed me.
Holy shit. And when you say it destroyed what's just a glimpse into what that looks like of the destruction?
So when I walked out of prison, the day before I walked out of prison, I was doing ritual work, meditation, breath work, visualization, all of these different things for up to 8 hours a day. The day I walked out of prison, I could not do it for 5 minutes. I couldn't. It was like the ability was gone. I couldn't read. When I was in prison, I read so many books that my wife actually had to rent a storage facility to hold them all. When I walked out of prison, I could not read anymore. I would read the same page of a book over and over and over, and I couldn't retain what I had read by the time I got to the bottom of it. I couldn't remember faces. I would introduce myself to someone after I'd had dinner with them the night before. Like it was at the worst of it. I love Mexican food, right? Mm-hmm. So we would be traveling around and everywhere we would go, like I would always be looking for like Mexican restaurants to find like the best one in the area. I remember one night going to one with my wife, and we're sitting at the table and we're looking at the menu. And I said to her, I would almost swear I've seen this menu before. I said, I don't recognize this place or anything else, but the border on this menu looks familiar. She said, we ate here last night. I had a complete and absolute nervous breakdown. That's what I mean when I was destroyed. Yeah.
Wow. So it's like a form of adrenalized culture shock almost of so many possibilities all at once, because it's hard to even call prison a cocoon, but you used it in that way. You transformed your environment, it sounds like, into a space for your awakening.
Yes.
So getting out, I mean, you were in a monastery. You turned the prison somehow into a monastery, it sounds like. And so it's leaving monastery life and going into the world. We've seen this movie before, almost like The Gods Must Be Crazy or something like that, where someone is dropped into a scenario that's so complex that it's hard for them to get their ground. And they're so simple. They've made their lives so simple, and they haven't had all these conditions. So is that sort of like is that it? It's like a blur of possibility almost?
Yes. I mean, what you're saying right now this is what I try to explain to people. You're saying it. Like what I always tell them is when I was in prison, it was my practices that allowed me to survive pain. Once I got out, I had to find practices that allowed me to survive pleasure.
Wow. Holy shit. Holy shit. We all just took a hit of acid, the whole audience at once. It's in the water supply. Oh my God. Who would ever imagine the trauma of pleasure?
Yes.
Holy shit.
Well, pleasure distracts you from your purpose, from your mission, from your sense of meaning in life. That's why so many people who don't have those things just spend their days chasing pleasure. And then they can't figure out, why do I feel so empty?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. I had to find, and magic didn't work anymore. For me, it was like something happened and that part of my life, for that time period was kind of over. So I had to find something else. I had to find something that I could dedicate myself to with the same level of intensity as I was doing when I was in prison. And out here, that became martial arts. And part of it is what you asked earlier about like age and realizing, I had wanted, ever since I was a kid back in the 70s and 80s, I grew up watching Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan and all these people. And I used to think, if you can do that, then you've accomplished something. Like that, you've done something with your life.
Right.
Not only that, but they were almost like superheroes to me, like back when I was a kid. And I thought, this was before I turned 50, but I thought I'm rapidly approaching half a century old. If I don't do this now, I'm never going to be able to do it.
Wow.
And I started it. And once, going back to the thing about like, you're going to have to do something that takes you out of your comfort zone, but that maybe you don't realize how important this is going to be until after you do it. It was like when I started doing it, I realized this is it. This is the foundation that will allow me to rebuild myself and my life.
Incredible. I mean, what do you say about that, both Zen and martial arts speaking to a part of you? Do you feel like it has that, if introduced correctly, it could have that appeal to more people, or does this feel like a predating this life karmic connection?
Both. A little column A, a little column B. Yeah. But
Nice.
That's one of the things that I do now is I just came off of doing a retreat at the Omega Center in Rhinebeck. And it was called the Way of the Sword Retreat. And for several days, it was just, these people came in from not just all over the country, but all over the world. And we practiced training with the sword for several days. The reason I do that is, number one, it's fun. I love doing it. But also,
looks like fun.
I think when people come in contact with it, not everyone, like some people are supposed to do music. Some people are supposed to do podcasts. Some people are supposed to dance. Some people are supposed to raise kids. Those are all these different things are what we're going to find meaning in and be able to use as the vehicle for dispersing that light, like Beethoven said. But I know if enough people come in contact with it and get a taste for it, that this is the thing that causes that spark and lights them up, that they'll find it. And whenever that happens to me, that's one of the most amazing things, like being in the presence of that and getting to train and, practice with people who are going through that part of their development. It's like it lets you experience the newness of it all again.
Oh, sure. I mean, if you can turn prison into a monastery, then anybody can turn their life conditions really, no matter what it is, music, whatever the thing is for you, you can also turn your home into a monastery or, and your life into a life's purpose of serving. Much like you were describing Chuck Norris and all that, there's the guy behind the guy, and the guy behind the guy is martial arts,
Yes.
It's like you were going like, so he's acting and this is action and all that stuff. And he seems to have this precision. It's like, what's the thing underneath that's making all that possible?
Yes.
And so you went to that. You're a deep diver.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
But it was almost like I didn't even think about it. The crazy thing about my life is 9 times out of 10, it doesn't feel it almost doesn't feel sometimes like I'm making a conscious decision to do certain things.
Right.
It almost feels like they just unfold and happen organically.
Yeah, like breath. I mean, you know how breath is just happening, and there's a phrase, basically stop breathing. You're being breathed. It's almost like this part of us is also being breathed into existence. But we have to remove all the obstacles that stand in the way, like you were talking about, of that most people can't hear. They can't hear the silence within, or this calling, because we're so caught up in the minutia.
Yes.
Oh man. Okay. So what's isolation's effect on the mind?
This is going to sound kind of odd, but I preferred it. When I first got to prison for like the first 10 years, I was in a different prison before they moved everyone on death row over to where we were in 24-hour a day, complete solitary confinement.
Wow.
Like when I first arrived in prison, like the first few years, we could go to the yard. Guys would go out and play basketball or dominoes or chess or, whatever it was, or doing on the yard, or, talking about football games or what have you. And then whenever I was moved over to the other prison where everyone is in solitary confinement, a lot of guys started to break. They needed that social contact, and they needed something to give their day meaning, whether it was reading a book outside or playing chess with other guys or whatever it was. They needed something to look forward to like that.
Yeah.
And when that was taken away, a lot of people just started to disintegrate and crack. But for me, it was like suddenly all distractions are removed. For me, that's the thing that I've said over and over and over. Like, a lot of people look at my life and the things that I've been to, and they'll think, that's a horrible thing, or, that's whatever it is. And they'll say, I'm sorry you went through that. And I appreciate the sentiment of that. But what I try to tell them is, there's a scripture in the Bible that says, I will give you beauty for ashes. It doesn't say you won't have ashes. It doesn't say sometimes there aren't parts of your life that won't be burnt to the ground. Yeah. But it says that if you keep doing what you're supposed to be doing, putting one foot in front of the other, that you will eventually be able to see beauty in those ashes. That's what I see when I look back at those times now. I don't see hardship. I see blessings.
It's almost like apologizing for the crucifix or something. The instrument that led to the awakening. Yes. Of course, we wouldn't wish it upon anybody, and we wouldn't wish isolation or a prison sentence, but you turned this into your vehicle.
Yes, exactly. And it brought so many amazing things into my life. We wouldn't even be sitting here having this conversation right now.
Right,
if that wouldn't have happened.
That's right. That's right. What's it like being innocent in prison? And I've just thought of this because you're walking around, let's say at the yard, is it true that everybody in prison is innocent? The funny phrase about like how everybody says that? Right.
No,
right.
Not at all.
So, and what's it like walking around knowing you're innocent among others? Do you look at other people like, I wonder if he's innocent too? I wonder if what he's saying is true. Does it feel like its own radiating truth among illusion?
Yeah. But it also is a kind of burden. Like, it's because when I first got to prison, like the first, I would say 2 years that I was there, like I started to degenerate. Like, what I mean by that is, from the moment my eyes opened in the morning, like I literally woke up angry every day. My first thoughts every day was, they have no right to do this to me. I'm not supposed to be here. And I would see guards walk past my cell, and I would feel a wave of just pure, raw hate well up in me for everyone who had done this to me. And then I realized, now, not only are you in this external hell, but you're also in an internal hell. Wow. Like, there's nowhere for you to go to get away from this misery, from this suffering. That was what made me realize I've got to do something about this. And the only thing I had that I could work with was spiritual practices. That was it. I couldn't go for bike rides or anything else. So I dedicated myself to that just to get me out of the internal misery that I was experiencing.
Incredible. I mean, you pardon my tears, but I've lived this series now, and Amy's film, West of Memphis. I've watched both of them 2 times through in the last year, and it's like I'm getting a piece of the story that I didn't know about, And so I don't ever apologize for emotion, but I am hit with like knowing what it was like for you, waking up angry. And my Tibetan teacher talks about anger a lot, and this is also why I'm emotional, because people will say like, why don't you get angry at the things that are happening in the country? And he goes, anger? He's like, why would I do that to my body? Why would I, if I am mad at someone, I'm sorry, I do an impression of him every time, but I kind of got to, he's like, he explained to me that anger, we're the only ones who feel it.
Yep.
It steeps in our body. And though we want to direct it toward others, and we're thinking that's what we're doing, we're just soaking in our own anger. And so to think about this injustice and you being in there innocent and then waking up every day, this is just such a heart-wrenching thing to think about, a young man in that situation. I mean, we're talking, you said the first 2 years, so I imagine you're talking about from 17 to 19 or 18 to 20.
Let's see, I was 18 when I was arrested, so it would have been about 19 to 20.
Oh, okay, it was.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were there some of the other fellows of the 3?
Yeah,
were 17?
One guy was 16, one guy was 17, and I was 18.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Okay. And you had the name Damien, so immediately like people are doing their fucking horror movie shit with you.
Yes.
Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah. But going back to what you just said for a second about, people asking your teacher, like, why don't you get angry about what's going on in the world?
Yeah.
The Buddha called that, he said that was like drinking poison in hopes that it's going to hurt somebody else.
That's right.
Or somebody else said it's like trying to scoop up a hot coal and throw at someone to burn them. Like you're going to get burned first.
That's right.
And a lot of times people will try to justify that and they'll say, yeah, but you can harness that anger to go out and create social change. Yeah, but you're poisoning whatever you're taking part in.
That's right.
Whatever it is that you're doing, you are
That's
injecting something harmful and something like there can be no world peace unless there is inner peace first, period.
That's right. Martin Luther King Jr. with the signs of I am a man rather than, anger signs. It was just like the bare fact of that I'm a man walking among the earth. I'm a human being.
Yes.
That was the protest sign at a time where there was so much anger and injustice toward African Americans and I'm a man is the answer. Just like human being. Oh, yeah. Okay, so how does the anger start? So you said you sort of slowly over those 2 years at a certain point have this breaking point of getting out of the anger and moving into this. What's the initial entryway? Is it talking with other death row inmates at that point? Who is the one who is in Zen? Or how do you even can you connect with anybody else?
Not really. That's you asking that question. This is something else I've tried to describe to people over the years. Like the first few years that I was in prison, I kept waiting on someone to come through the door that I could have like a normal, like deep conversation with. It never happened. And then one day I realized it's because normal people don't kill people. People that are coming through, there's something wrong there. Right. These aren't people who think like normal, like what we would think of as normal, like people in society do. Yeah.
And the confusing thing on top of that is that they can act, some of the people who do have that thing that you're talking about can act like they're normal.
Yes.
But they're seeing a whole other world and an opportunistic moment can have them snap immediately.
Yes. Or even not like an opportunistic moment. It's like, it could be something like people who can't conceive of any way to resolve a situation beyond violence. Like if they have a dispute with someone, there is nothing that they can think of to do to work that dispute out other than punch the other person in the face.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
So that kind of thing, for me, it was what allowed me to start working my way through it was Zen. But the reason it did is because, I've tried to describe this to people before too, how Timothy Leary, whenever he was sent to prison for doing like all the LSD experiments, Ram Dass came to see him at one point and told him, he says, we've got some people together, we've got a plan, and we're going to break you out of here. Timothy Leary says, you can't do that. I've got too much work to do. I've got stuff going on. That's how I felt by the time I walked out of prison. I did not think about getting out of prison anymore. Entire days would go by when I didn't even, register the walls or the bars or the guards or anything, because I was so focused and excited about what I was doing. Wow. So it's almost like a sleight of hand trick. Like, it caused me to take my attention off of my environment, off of my circumstances, off of my hardship, and place it on something else. It's like that thing they say about how if you want to change the world, don't focus on destroying what other people are doing. Instead, focus your energy onto building something else, building an alternative. That's what I did. I built an alternative life that I could focus on instead of the hardship.
What are the early Zen books, just for the Damien Echols fans and people who are interested in Zen? What were some of the early literature that you were able to get? Were you able to get your hands on any Shunryu Suzuki?
I did. I was in my beginner's mind. Yeah. Beautiful. But for me personally, the teacher, the Zen master that blew everybody else out of the water is a guy that a lot of people probably haven't heard of. He's a Korean Zen master. His name was Sung San, Seungshn. And he came over to the U.S. from Korea and started the Kwan School of Zen. Oh. And he wrote several books. One was called The Compass of Zen. One was called Dropping Ashes on the Buddha. Several others. His teachings, like, it goes, like, he strips all of the esoteric stuff out of everything. And like, if you like, he teaches almost entirely through koans, right? Oh yeah. Like these questions that like short circuit the thinking process. And one of his most well-known koans is he'll show you a glass of water and he'll say, what is this? If you say this is a glass of water, I'm going to hit you 30 times with this stick. If you say this is not a glass of water, I'm going to hit you 30 times with this stick. If you don't answer, I'm going to hit you 60 times with this stick. Essentially, what he's asking you is, show me enlightenment. Don't explain it to me. Don't tell me about it. Show it. Demonstrate it. So the correct answer to that koan would be, you would take the glass of water and take a drink and then set it down.
Wow, nice. That's right. The most obvious thing that you do, the simplest thing, we complicate it all with a million different things and trying to explain it, and maybe even explain the chemical compound of water and all that stuff. Get into the depths of it and think that that's what the master wants. And they just want us to live our life in simplicity and take the next right action.
Exactly. That's it, exactly.
Beautiful. So is it like a duck to water, these words and the literature as it's coming? Is it easy to understand and almost like, wow, I've been waiting for this, or how is the learning curve?
I think because I had started off with the other sort of stuff, like Suzuki and even Thich Nhat Hanh, and I'd read like a bunch of the Tibetan teachers, even like what's the guy who wrote Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism?
Oh, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche.
Yeah. Like people like that. I'd read all that stuff and I was like, okay, I'm digging this, but it's not quite connecting. Like, I can't quite figure it out. I can't, like, it feels good to me and I recognize the truth of it, but I'm having trouble like getting a handhold in this stuff. And then when I discovered Sung San, it was like somebody dropped an atomic bomb in my head.
Incredible. Around how do you move beyond an identity that the world refuses to let go of?
You don't think about it. You don't try. Once again, it goes back to the whole thing about how things just sort of unfolded organically. Yeah. It was like I would find something that I loved, whether it was Zen or alchemy or martial arts, and I would pour myself into it with all my being, and I would forget everything else. It's almost like you can't, if somebody tells you, I bet you can't think of a pink elephant, or I bet you can't not think of a pink elephant in the next minute. And you're like, yes, I can, but you're automatically thinking of it.
Yeah.
It's like you can't fight your mind. You can't, when we're talking about ego, like ego and mind are basically interchangeable terms,
Yes.
From Eastern and Western perception. When you can't fight against, like when you're using the intellect, we want to be able to use the intellect, but not be used by the intellect. Most people are used by the mind.
That's right.
You cannot use the mind to overcome the mind. You have to use something else. So it was just shifting my focus onto something else, almost like a distraction that made everything, like once I stopped fighting it, it dissolved away. I think the biggest example of that would be for years, even when I was doing the spiritual practices, like I would wonder every day, like, when am I going to get out of here? Am I going to get out of here? Like, when's my next appeal going to happen? When am I going to go to court? How is this all going to unfold? And year after year went by and nothing was happening. Nothing was moving. The second that I stopped thinking about even getting out of prison, almost immediately, I called my wife one morning. I used to talk to her every morning. I was allowed to do a phone call every day, and I would call her. And one morning I called her and she said, I need to tell you something. And I said, what? And she said, the prosecutor is offering you a deal. And if you sign these papers, you can go home before the week is out. Once I let go of getting out and didn't care anymore, it wasn't just that I did. It was like I wasn't caring about getting out. The second I released it, it came to me.
Wow. After all those years. And that's insane. The precision of that, the clearing and the purification, getting to like a glass of water, just being kind of dried out by the sun. And finally, when it's completely evaporated, the freedom comes, but which is a confusing freedom as you described it. I mean, to come, but I want to ask you about that because before I even go there, hold on a second. You said something earlier that I want to address. Oh, yeah. What people don't know about studying these traditions is that it comes with its own justice system. Its own, right? Wow. Yeah. It just comes with its own laws and all that. And so when you get immersed in a tradition and you're a regular spiritual practitioner and you're dedicated, the mind and the way that you view the comings and goings of life and what's morality and all that, it changes. And so it's like we're like how I feel every time I'm in my home, I'm still a homeless person and I'm still a refugee because I belong nowhere. I belong to no nationality. I belong to no country. I belong, even though I'm an American and I'm Italian American, all the different things, the identity. But I live by my own thing, which is like I don't even exist. That's a justice. That's a truth that I don't even exist really. I'm just whatever the surface level showing of a Jamie and life conditions and experiences made a human being a story, but at a microscopic level, I'm nothing. And space is the thing that's holding all these elements together. And so at my root, I'm that. And that's what I live by as I pay bills, as I drive a car, as I do all these other things. I'm not here also while I'm here. And that's its own sort of set of code or whatever. Is that kind of would that be the recipe for, or the ingredients of freedom, of the freedom that you can find over years in practice that you had in prison?
That's a method of doing it. I think what you're describing is what led me one time to ask my teacher when I was in prison. I asked him, I said, why don't we have more stuff? I said, Tibetan Buddhists have stuff, they're like the Catholics of Buddhism. They have prayer wheels.
You see those ribbons back there?
Yes.
It's like an assortment
prayer
of
flags.
Yeah.
All these different things, and we have nothing. I was like, why don't we have something? And the way he described it, he said, think of a mountain. He said, Tibetan Buddhists climb up this mountain slowly until they reach the top. And then when they reach the top, they fly off. He said, we fly up to the top of the mountain and land, but then we have to figure out how to very slowly crawl down it.
Incredible. Wow.
And I think it for me, the difference instead of doing it that way was just learning how to, when you do something, just do something.
Right.
Like when you drive, just drive.
Right.
Don't think about it. Don't deconstruct the universe or the self. Feel your hands on the steering wheel. Right. Feel your feet on the gas pedal. Feel the wind blowing through your hair from the window open. When you eat, just eat. Just taste the macaroni and cheese or whatever it is that you're eating. For me, that was the key to everything, was just do what you're doing.
I mean, it's so true. Even in my own awakening, sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Clunkiness. In my own awakening over the last few years, as I got deeper and deeper into Vajrayana teachings and all that, I can't multitask anymore. It's celebrated multitasking. It's you're a straight shooter with upper management written all over you. If you can, to quote Office Space, that's what people are looking for, is people who can balance multiple things. Our friend Amy Berg has this great assistant named Sam, and he's able to do all that kind of stuff. For me, the awakening came with this I realized that I couldn't effectively eat my food if I'm in a conversation with somebody or I'm watching TV. I really need to pay attention to every bite in order to chew effectively, to not bite my tongue, to digest well. And I really enjoy also being with every bite. And it's the same thing with interactions. People, I'll be talking to somebody, or maybe I'll be composing an email or something on my phone, and then somebody will walk up, and as is the tradition of the day, we'll just start talking to you while you're doing something. And maybe most people just go, and they start having that conversation while they're still typing. I can't do that. For one, it's a disrespect to the person who's just come up and asked me something to be looking at something else. And two, I'm in the middle of something that you just interrupted, and I really enjoy being with all of the words and composing each message that I send to be one that I could... I mean, this is kind of a perfect thing, but I always picture that every text message I send could be used in court. Yeah. I just pretend that. Just like every message I send, we've seen your documentary, all the documentaries out there of like how this seemingly innocent exchange got used in a nefarious way. So I really I don't have a guilty mind. It's not about that. It's just like I like putting love and care into the care for myself and the care for others into the intention of every message. And if somebody comes up and talks to me, I have to stop doing this thing and I have to pay attention to them, or I have to say, excuse me, hold on one second. I was just writing a message, and let them know doing one thing at a time is the way I roll now. And it's not in the culture.
If you don't, you miss your whole life.
Right.
You are not present for your life. Like if you're doing one thing while your mind is somewhere else, think about, like, say, if you take a drive somewhere and while you're driving, you're thinking about something else, and suddenly you arrive at your destination and you didn't even register anything that happened. You missed the whole drive. Yeah, right. That's the way our lives are. If you don't stop and pay attention, it's going to be over and you will not have even been present for it.
Man, just before me taking the deeper dive into what I consider the epicenter of my spiritual awakening, the thing that woke me up the most was that I had small children, and I had to drive far to work, and this is just prior to my spiritual awakening. I would have a morning full of activity, and then I'd be driving to work, and all of a sudden somebody would slam on their brakes in front of me, and then I'd wake up and I go, oh my God, I wasn't even paying attention. Like, what happened? Like, I missed my whole morning because of habit. Habit can carry your body through all those things, and you can get shit done, but you're not present for it. And I was thinking, God, I'm going to miss my kid's life. All that kind of stuff. I'm going to miss the unfoldment of the day-to-day activity.
Yes.
So that hit on the brakes thing woke me out of my sleep to realize that, like, I am missing it because I am holding all these dishes in my mind to like a good waiter, you know.
Yes.
But I'm not much like a server at a restaurant. That's their gig, and it's not who they are. It's not how they would prefer to be, you know.
Right.
It's what they're thinking they have to do to make money.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
You know? Oh, God. Okay, so let's see. Oh, take me back to that week where you get the call. And I know Jason and Jesse, it's told in West of Memphis that Jason had been in this place where he was really embodying his innocence, and just was in a standstill of like not want, like really, I'd rather be in prison and be innocent than be released on these circumstances, which were you were to sign an admission of your guilt in order to get out.
Yep.
Which is just like, I mean, we could go into, and we are like, you and I already know what that whole deal is. The court's saving face and the whole system saving face by just going like, well, see, they did it, but we're going to let them out or whatever. Like, not just accepting the L on their end and having to get a win, even with the injustice that's been presented. So
they didn't want us being able to sue them.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Oh my God. Of course. And I don't need, I guess maybe that's talked about in there, but that's not the emphasis. It's sort of, so, and that's an honorable place that Jason was in.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely understood it.
All right. And now knowing about what you didn't know what was to come on the other side of your so-called freedom coming out of prison, you know, which you found was like a prison in itself on some level. I mean, not to use too strong a language to someone who's experienced prison, and I'm just flippantly using it. But in that phase, while you know that Jason is in that place with things and all that, do you have any fear yet of the freedom, or did the fear hit you after you got out? Or did you have any major apprehension about entering into the world? Was it, even though your wife was on the other side and the next chapter?
I didn't really have time to do that yet, just because, it was almost immediately entering this kind of this battle state. You know, what I mean by that is I hadn't even thought about getting out in years, right? Suddenly that's put back in my head, and here it is. It's right in front of me. But I've got, on the other hand, like Jason Baldwin, who doesn't want to accept it because he doesn't want to accept anything other than the state saying we were wrong. You know, we railroaded you. We sent you to prison for something you didn't do. Like that was what he wanted. Yeah. And like he was holding out. He was willing to stay in prison if they didn't do that.
Yeah.
And I knew if this slips through our hands, I'm going to die here. This is our last opportunity. You know,
it did feel that way even to the audience. I mean, I felt that way.
I don't think he understood that yet. Like he didn't comprehend how close we were to like that sort of situation, you know, because that wasn't going to happen. The state was never going to come in and say, we made a mistake.
Right.
We know you're innocent. Go home. Was not. He could have sat there for 150 years and it was not ever going to happen. Yeah. I didn't have 150 years. I had a very small window of time. And I knew if he doesn't agree to this, I'm going to lose my life.
Did you have any communication with him during that period of time at all?
We were not allowed to communicate at all.
Right, of course. And it had been years. I mean, were you able to communicate even in the beginning? I guess just during the trial. But even that would have been tough, right?
Even that they tried to prevent. Like his lawyers did not want him talking to me. I mean, his original trial lawyers, I think like their whole thing, like their whole idea for his defense was guilt by association.
Right.
Like that they're focused on Damien, and Jason got drug into it by accident. So they didn't want him talking to me. They didn't want him looking at me. They wanted to put as much distance between us as they possibly could. So we even then know.
What can you say about the notion of friendship in that case? You and Jason were friends. He looked up to you perceivably early on, prior to the arrests and prior to this whole thing unfolding. And then you guys are put through the most incomprehensible situation imaginable. And then you're separated and you haven't spoke so much as a word to each other in 20 years. And your freedom is hanging in the balance. And from what I can tell from what was in West of Memphis is that Jason's loyalty to you, even after these decades of not speaking, and even after everything having transpired and all the countless moments that we can't even account for in here in a podcast of just the day to day, this enduring loyalty that he has to just, I wouldn't even call it friendship. I want to call it love, like the love of him knowing that you are both innocent and him choosing even against his morality. What would you say about that?
I think it goes beyond friendship. I think it goes to something that I don't even have a word for, which is what I would say it is Jason Baldwin himself. I think when we were 16 years old, I think Jason Baldwin at the age of 16 had more nuts and more integrity than most adults ever will their entire life.
Wow.
Even back then, they told him, if you just blame all this on Damien, you can walk out of here. You can get this deal. Nope. He's not going for it. Not at 16 years old.
Yeah.
The same thing kind of comes around full circle, when I'm getting ready to get out and they're like, once again, all you got to do is sign this paper saying that, we'll allow you. Like we took this weird thing they called an Alfred plea. If you've never heard of it, it means that you get to maintain your innocence. You get to keep saying, I didn't do this, I'm innocent, but you are also signing a guilty plea saying, I accept this, charge or whatever so that we can put this to bed. Mm-hmm. And once again, it was that same thing, just saying no. He wasn't back then going to throw someone under the bus when he knew he would be lying. He was not willing to do that. He was not willing to lie to save his life or, get a deal out of it or anything else. Same way at the very end, he was not willing to say he had done something that he had not done, even if it meant he was going to walk out of there. Right. So I think that's the thing, like the core of Jason Baldwin. Everybody's got flaws. Everybody's messed up in their own ways, especially when you think of somebody who's 16 years old and going through things that would destroy, most adults. And he didn't have like all of the, steady, grounded, stable people around him when he was in prison, like I did, that was helping me out. He's pretty much going through this alone. I can't even tell you like all the physical damage. Like at one time he had like a fractured skull. He said he walked into a room in the prison. He's in the prison. He walks into a room and he said the next thing he knows, he wakes up and it's like 3 days later and he's in the hospital in like an intensive care unit. He said what had happened when he walked into the room, he was a very small kid, even for 16 years old. Somebody grabbed him, picked him up and slammed him head first onto the concrete floor.
Oh my God.
You're talking about horrendous mental, emotional, physical damage that that nobody's going to go through without coming out the other side being severely messed up in a lot of different ways. But you're still you're talking about someone that's still even going through all that somehow, whatever else they lost, however else they changed, had still maintained that core, that nuts and integrity that allowed him to do what he did in the beginning. It just ran through his life.
Yeah, because you can even see it like when you guys are going through the trial and he's being asked about things, not in court, but sort of in the back room while you guys are waiting, and all these things are being presented to him that all he has to do is just say that you did it, and he's being asked about that. You can see this integrity that you're talking about there, but how fragile it is. Yeah. I mean, in the youth, to hold that level of integrity when all the chips are stacked against you.
Yes.
And all the cards are stacked against you, or whatever the term is. And you can watch him almost like looking in the eyes of the person that's asking the question, going like, yeah, well, that wouldn't be right. And almost looking like, right? Like that thing of like, he's still there of like, right? Isn't this right? Like, and that endures and becomes this person that you're talking about that we refer to as Jason Baldwin and the nuts of this guy, what a beautiful tribute, at least today on this podcast. I didn't have that information about him, and I love seeing him in an even more saintly, in a saintly way of having that strength that you needed in that moment and throughout the years.
And I don't know where that came from. We both grew up dirt poor, uneducated. I dropped out of school when I was in 9th grade.
Yeah.
I think he may have done the same. Well, he went to prison when he was 16. I think he got his GED and everything else after he was in prison. But you're talking about like dirt poor, poverty, uneducated, backwoods, trailer park, white trash. And still, somehow at that age, he had something that most people will never have in their lives.
Yeah, totally,
like they've done all of these studies that show whenever there's all this pressure on you. I mean, look at how many false confessions, we know now that people will, if you put enough pressure on people, they will break and they will say that they've done things they haven't done. There are people that go to prison because they confess to a crime, and then years later they do DNA testing and find out that it wasn't actually that person, and they ask him, why did you confess? And he's like, I didn't have a choice. They were crushing me. They're making me say this. Most adults aren't able to hold up in that.
That's right. Absolutely. And Jesse certainly was taken advantage of in that case. And it's wonderful to see you all. It's just wonderful to see you all out. What was that? I know there's this word ineffable, certain things that are just undescribable. But I guess the day that you guys got out and made your speeches in court and they were so beautiful. It was so incredible to watch you guys, all three, say what you said in accepting the guilty plea when at the same time saying but I wasn't. And you guys, I would even mess it up just even trying to remember exactly what you guys all said. But it was so incredible to watch it. What's the feeling of, this is the dumb basic bitch question, but what is it like walking out?
Was hell on earth. Going through the stuff with even before I walked, it started before I walked out, when the whole thing was happening about Jason, not wanting to accept the deal in the beginning, that happened, and people were trying to convince him. They were saying you need to do this. You need to take this. That lasted for a week. During that week, I did not eat. I did not sleep. I could do nothing but pace the floor 24 hours a day. I was so tired. I was so that's when the nervous breakdown started. And then whenever I was released and went out into the world, it was like this cascade effect. But by that point, I was just done. I could not even really I was doing everything I could just to hold myself together to get through the hearing. It was not a good, pleasant, fun, victory celebration sort of thing for me, at least, at all. It was devastating on every level.
Yeah, God, that's incredible to hear, because this is the moment that everybody's been waiting for, and there's a version of your hell that you're just beginning, and you're walking out of a hell that you transformed into a heaven. on some level, a place for you to practice your own domain and where it's undistracted. And now you're entering into a new hell that is on the outside. I think that's incredibly fascinating. And also, has it been a similar, to create the outside as the monastery now? Has it been a similar rituals and dug in practice, or what's it been like to turn this outside now into that place?
Whenever I broke and, in prison, I built this life where everything was regimented, everything was structured. I knew what I was supposed to doing, at what time of day I was supposed to be doing it. From the minute I woke up until the minute I went to bed, I would get out of bed in the morning and start doing push-ups. And then I'm going to read for an hour. And then I'm going to sit meditation for an hour. And then I'll do something else for an hour. And then I'll sit for an hour. Every part of the day was structured and accounted for, even though it was a structure that I built myself. Whenever I got out, suddenly there's no structure. There's, you can do anything, anytime. You can eat whenever you want. It was just it's hard to describe it, but it's like walking into a vacuum.
Right.
And I realized eventually, if I'm going to survive out here, when I was in prison those last days, I wasn't happy, but I was content. I was content because I had built a life that had meaning in it. I realized once I got out, when I really started to think about it and saw just how downhill I was going and how I was coming apart, I realized I've got to find some way to come back to that state of contentment. How do I do that? And I started to dissect what had allowed me to enter that state to begin with. And I realized it's structure. I have to have a scaffolding for my life. Well, in prison, it was spirituality. It was the meditation. It was the alchemical work, all of these sort of things that allowed me to build the structure around it. For some reason out here, it just didn't work the same way as it did when you're in solitary confinement. Out here, it became martial arts. But I didn't know that at first. I just knew I have to find some kind of structure that's going to allow me to rebuild my life.
Gotcha.
And then what happened, it was a crazy experience that I can't even remember what kicked it off. What? Oh, I remember. Yeah, I do. Okay. So sometime during COVID, I needed a mirror replaced on my Jeep, one of the side mirrors. I needed a mirror replaced. And I took it into this shop and they kept it and they told me it'll be ready in, a few days, whatever. And 2 weeks go by and I still didn't have it. And I'm starting to call every day. I'm like, what's going on here? And I'd already paid in advance. And it was like they had just taken the money, didn't do the repairs, and then just disappeared off the face of the earth. So we go there to the shop one day, and Lori walks into the shop. I'm sitting in a different car waiting on her to come out, and she walks into the shop, and she comes out, and she's shaking. And she says, "They were so horrible." And I said, "What do you mean?" She says, when I went in, they were trying to intimidate me. When I walked in, one guy comes out and locks the door behind me, to make sure I know, you can't get out without coming by us first, all this sort of stuff. She said, they started saying all this vile stuff to me. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what? It's just like a shock, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, while I'm sitting there trying to take in what she's saying and digest it all, 3 guys walk out of the shop, and one of them's holding a giant crescent wrench, and one of them's got a pipe in his hand, and they're standing there they're waiting for me to get out so that they can mess me up. And I'm like, whoa, what the hell is this? What is how did my day turn into this?
Yeah.
I didn't see this coming. This come out of left field.
Yeah.
It jarred me enough where I thought, I don't ever want to feel helpless in situations like this again. I want to know how to take care of myself in ways that can't ever be taken away from me. So
Yeah.
the first thing I did is I joined a hardcore boxing gym, not like a fitness boxing gym, but like a coach who was training like people in their 20s to fight matches. And that kind of gave me the courage to think, what I've always wanted to do my entire life is karate. Always. It's not cool anymore. Nobody likes karate anymore. It's considered like obsolete or whatever. Now
We
everybody
grew up with Karate Kid. I mean, you
exactly,
and I, yeah,
exactly, yeah.
That was big. Ralph
But
Macchio was big.
Yes, I started. I actually have a little figurine of him. I don't think you can see it from here,
you?
but up in that window right there.
Oh, yeah,
there's
nice.
a little figurine of him up there
Daniel?
that just inspires and motivates me or whatever.
Rad.
But it eventually led me to that. And that whenever I went into that class for the first time, I knew, most of the time in our lives, we don't realize moments that are kind of shaping us or that are important until hindsight when we look back. But I've been blessed a few times in my life to know as I was experiencing something that this is important.
Yeah.
The very first time I walked into that karate school, like that was one of those times I knew this is it. This is what I've wanted all my life, and I'm here, and this is my structure.
Wow.
This is what's going to give me the framework to shut out the rest of the world. Don't focus on anything that's going on in the world. There is nothing in the world happening off of this mat.
It's the new cell of,
Yes.
I mean, in a weird way. Yeah.
Yes, that's what it was. Yes.
Wow. Fucking A. What a fucking beautiful story. Oh, God. Oh, okay. Were the guys with the wrenches, did it turn out that they were just random trying to take advantage of somebody, or was it, did they have some thing against you?
No, it was them just like somebody told me later, we were living in Louisiana at the time, and somebody told us later that they call them like the Cajun Mafia. And they knew they could get away with stuff because it was like a really big family, and they had families. They had members that were like in law enforcement and like basically running everything. So they knew they could do whatever they wanted to whoever they wanted to, and nobody could do anything about it. Was what it was.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's a story like the Murdaugh stories. The Murdaugh murders. Oh, good. I'm glad. I hope you're staying out of all that shit. Anyway, never looking at that stuff again. What's it like to have? I want to ask you about falling in love in prison, of course, because it's. I mean, just from an outside perspective, I don't know you guys, but I'm such a fan of your love, and I told that to Lori in some of the exchanges leading up to this conversation. But before I get into that, what's it like to watch your own life become mythologized? I mean, we've been studying mythology, and now your life is a part of like the lore of the landscape of America and justice and and all that. And I imagine people have I imagine people are constantly doing what they do, projecting onto you. I mean, certainly at the time of the trials and after, but then even outside of it, like projecting, oh, it's so great to see you in freedom and all that kind of stuff. And you're in this, new hell that we've talked about.
Right.
So, but what is it like becoming mythology?
It was hard in the beginning, just because once again, it was almost like that was the prison in a way. I started to feel almost like I never got out. If every single conversation you have is about prison and everybody that comes up to you that recognizes you, that's the thing they're talking about.
Right.
And some ways you almost start to feel like this is what I fought for. So I can be reminded of this over and over every single day. But that's still a form of attachment.
Yeah.
Like ultimately you have to reach a point where you don't care. It's not what's happening right here, right now, and you have to let it go. If you're going to be happy, Confucius said, if you constantly live in the past, you are going to experience despair and depression. If you're constantly living in the future, you're going to experience anxiety. There is only one place where contentment and peace can be found, and that is in the present moment. When you're in the present moment, you're just eating when you eat, walking when you walk, driving when you drive, having a conversation with someone when you're having a conversation with someone. And you don't think about all of those abstract things anymore. So I try not to think about it, just because it's one of those things that, it doesn't really play a role in my life either way. Like say for example, the people who are miserable and angry because they're like obsessed with politics, right? Like whatever politician is in right now, it's like, you can't have a conversation with some people with like, this politician's doing this right now, and I'm so mad because of that, and I'm so mad because of this, and it's got everything messed up and it's affecting my life. And my question is, whoever the president is, did it stop you from getting out of bed and doing some sit-ups this morning? It's really not affecting like the vast majority of your life if you take your attention back away from it. Right. Those things are put there almost like to draw your attention. That's what they want. They want you to feed attention into those things. Right. Even if it's hate or if it's love. If you're 100, not love, not like real love, like I agree with what this guy.
Possession love.
Yes. Yeah. Whichever way, it's still like feeding energy to it.
Right.
You have to take that back. And it's kind of the same way with me for things like that, what my life means in the bigger picture or whatever. It's like, I can't,
Yeah. Totally. And, then this is why the phrase, enlightenment is the ego's final disappointment,
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Isn't it? Because the ego's like, what? No, we're something. No, what do you mean nothing? Where are we going? Like, but our whole life, we've been kicked around. Like, what do you mean? You don't need me. It's just the final cry of disappointment is enlightenment. What's the word? It's not impervious, but it's an unaffected state. What's the word? It doesn't matter. Anyway, what were you going to say?
What was it? It's gone. I lost it.
Okay,
that must not have been very important.
I want to ask you about love now. So what's it like first getting contacted by Lori, and then how does the love grow? And then you're in this very unique position also that I want to hear about of getting to do the real love, which is non-physical, which happens in the mind, which is you're in this perfect container to actually really get to know somebody over time, see how they go through all the ups and downs, but non-physically, just in conversation, and see how they go through all this. And I imagine it puts you in one of the most unique positions to fall in love that I've ever heard of that has endured. Yeah. So take us through this unique love story, if you wouldn't
remember
mind.
What I was saying a while ago about how most of the time we don't realize something is important or life-changing until we look back in hindsight.
I just love that you just said remember, and I was like, we've already known each other long enough to where you can say, remember when I said that? I felt special. I'm just calling it out.
But Lori was one of those things. She was one of those moments. The very first letter that I got from her, whenever she was one of the first people to see the original Paradise Lost before it was ever aired on HBO or anything. She saw it in the theater in New York.
Oh, wow.
But by that point, people had started to catch on a little bit that something's wrong here. And I started receiving mail from people. I would receive letters from people just about every day. But the very first letter that I received from Lori, the very first letter, when I opened it, I knew to the core of my being, this is one of those moments. This is one of the most important things that you will experience in your lifetime. It is happening right now. Incredible. I knew that from the very first letter. I knew this isn't some random person. I knew this is very central to the core of your entire existence in some way.
Incredible. How long from that date of getting that letter? How long from that letter until you got out? What was that duration from receiving the first letter to release?
We met in 96. I went to prison in 93. We met in 96, and I got out in 2011. So from 1996 to 2011.
Wow, 15 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Holy moly. And it's a daily, you're able to call her daily while you're in there? So does that begin pretty quick? Or
what's that?
Does that begin pretty quick? Like, do you start communicating by phone right away? Or how's the dating? What's the dating process like?
Yeah, not for a little while. We started writing back and forth first. And right now, we're going through the process. Lori's been going through our old letters. Like up in our bedroom right now, there are boxes and boxes and there are thousands and thousands of letters up there. Incredible. Where we would write each other sometimes not one letter a day, but sometimes like twice a day.
Wow.
And that began immediately, almost like this obsessive writing where we were in this constant conversation. Yeah. That was another one of the things that allowed me to forget prison. Like we were building a world together, a life together, even when I was in there, through the conversations we were having in the letters. And then we would start doing things like reading the same books, so that we were doing the same thing. We created these rituals together to bind ourselves. Like one of them was every single month on the night of the full moon, we would both take a glass of water and put it somewhere out where the moon would shine on the water. Yeah. And then then we would take the water, and every single night until the water was gone at the exact same time every night, both of us would take a drink of the water so that we were both doing the same thing at the same time, no matter how far apart we were. We were building a life and a world together.
God, this is intimacy. You guys are having intimacy in this non-physical consummation way, but in the physicality of like sharing moments together at the exact time. That's so beautiful. And also the handwriting thing. I mean, while you were in, everybody was learning how to type and typing like this with their fingers, and you're keeping this handwriting thing going that like. Now, whenever I pick up a pen, I miss writing, and my handwriting has gotten really pretty poor. Considering like how little we're actually physically using pens,
and it's not the same thing. It does different things. Like when you, think about like whenever you text someone. Like you may just be in a rush, right? Like they ask you a question and you're just in a rush, and the only thing you have time to respond real quick is okay. They see that text and they think, oh, they're pissed. I don't understand what I did, but they're mad because they just sent me a short text. Yeah. Like it's not possible to really feel the energy of it when you're doing that. When you write somebody letters and when you read someone's letters, you can feel what they were feeling when they were writing. Like it is saturated with their energy.
Beautiful. And was her original intent writing you, did she feel that connection to you from the same place that when you got her first letter, you felt that thing? Did she feel those feelings also, or was it under the guise of wanting to help get you out, and then you fell in love through the process, both of you?
She, when she saw the very first Paradise Lost documentary, I've never watched those documentaries, have no desire to whatsoever.
Okay, right. Okay.
That's like the guy who was executed. Like he was that introduced me to his teacher. He told me at one point, like he was almost executed another time. They came and got him from death row and took him over to what they call the death house, where they get ready to execute you at. And at the last minute, he got a stay of execution and they brought him back. And I remember we're going to the yard one day and he tells me, he says, yeah, we got pretty close to the execution. He says, like, I saw my whole life flash before my eyes, but I didn't pay any attention to it because it was a rerun. That's the way I look at like stuff like the documentaries, things like that. It's like I was there. It's a rerun to me.
Dude, but the only part that I long for you, of course, to experience, which you don't even need to. God, your life's so full and like, but is that Metallica is coding this thing like throughout the whole thing. One of your favorite bands, at least it says in the doc, is just like all over the thing. And you know that they've sanctioned that and signed off. So they're loaning their music to somebody that they relate to almost is what I've felt. Have you communicated with them directly?
I don't think I have. I can't remember a lot. Keep in mind, I have almost no memory of the first couple of years that I was out of prison at all.
Out of those years, the mind's necessity kind of thing, like protection. It was
just part of the breakdown. Everything just kind of if you took everything I can remember about the first couple of years or so that I was out of prison, it would maybe equal a few hours of time.
Wow.
So a lot of stuff I just have no memory of anymore. Lori will bring up, say like the name of a person, and I'll say, never heard of him. And she'll say, yes, you did. We, did this with him or did that with him or whatever it is. But it was, my whole point about the thing about the rerun is, even though I feel that way, I've heard from so many people who, whenever they saw those documentaries, it did something to them. Yeah. It affected them in profound ways. And she said that's what happened to her. She said she went and saw the documentary, and keep in mind, there's no internet yet. There's no way to look up anything about me or anything else.
Yeah.
She said she couldn't stop thinking about it for days. She said it was like for days she kept thinking about it. And she finally realized, if there's anything I can do in this situation to help in some way, I want to do it. That was when she wrote me the first letter, basically saying, is there anything I can do here? Is there something I can offer, something I can, help with, any of that sort of stuff? And we just started corresponding, and it evolved from there over a period of many years.
God, incredible. And then when did you guys get married? And was it while you were incarcerated?
We got married in 99. Yeah, 1999. Yeah. Incredible. We have, so far as I know, there may have been another one so far, but as far as I know, while I was there, we had the only Buddhist wedding ceremony in Arkansas prison history.
Fuck yeah. That's the kind of stats we want to hear in the worst case scenario. Oh, God. Amy Berg's involvement at a certain point. And it seems like, and I haven't ever talked to her about this directly, but it seems like either she happened to be there at the right time where new evidence was being unearthed, or her involvement in this documentary kicked up new investigations that led to finding that the marks on the children were made by turtles and all that kind of stuff in the swamp life, more so than knives done in ritualistic killings.
Right.
Was her starting the doc process, did that lead to new evidence being unearthed, or was she just
kind
around
of the
to catch
reverse?
it?
So what happened was we had a lot of people try to come on and start trying to help us out, right?
Gotcha, yeah.
One of those was Peter Jackson and his partner, Fran Walsh.
I can't believe we haven't brought them up. Yes, of course. That was incredible to watch.
So they started, they weren't just like doing like celebrities do sometimes and like throw cash at a situation to try to help out. They were actually boots on the ground, hiring forensic investigators and all, they were actually working on the case.
We're talking Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson, by the way, just, and his wife.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. So they're working on the case and they're working with Lori. So for example, when we're leading up to DNA testing, they would send Lori out to different places. Like say, for example, Lori was out actually looking through people's garbage for like cigarette butts to try to get enough DNA to match the DNA that they had found at the crime scene on.
Amazing.
So it's Lori, Peter Jackson, and his partner, Fran Walsh, who are doing this. They realized at some point, we should probably start documenting this, getting this like recorded so that we have this all in one place. And they started thinking about who could we get to do this, like what kind of director. And somehow or another, they I don't know how they knew of Amy or how
I think there was some, it was some prior, from what I understand. Something. Yeah. She was on their radar.
Yeah, but they brought her in to start making the documentary while all of that stuff was taking place.
Did you get to, was she in prison and talking to you through glass at times, or did you have any of that?
No memory at all. Like my first memory of Amy Berg is after I was out of prison. I can remember like I'd been out for maybe 3 days, and I remember sitting in a kitchen talking to a camera. That's it. That's the only memory I have of those early times.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow. And then a lot of the people that have shown up to help also, some of them have become stars since you've been in prison, like Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam. They started getting big in like 92, 93 or whatever. So had you even heard of Pearl Jam by the time you were in? I had
heard of them, but it wasn't really my thing. I didn't like, when I was a kid, I was like a metalhead, we were Metallica, Megadeth, Testament, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really my wheelhouse, so I wasn't like super familiar with, like all their albums and songs and stuff like that. But I knew who they were just because like grunge was kind of exploding at the same time.
Right. And Johnny Depp, even, I know he has, I don't know if you guys have become close since all this, but he got involved early on too. And he's an activist in this way, certainly. I
consider him to be one of my absolute closest friends in this world and in this life. There's
incredible.
He's one of the few people that, if I were really in a hard situation and needed some kind of help in some way, he's one of the people that I know if I reached out, like he would reach back.
Amazing. That's incredible. Forgiveness, the notion of it, and what is your relationship with that word, and where has it been applied?
First, I think I had to figure out and learn what forgiveness really is. I think a lot of times we have this idea about forgiveness like it's this, like we're these benevolent beings and we're just, I forgive you for the thing you've did to me because I'm good and I'm exalted. It's not what forgiveness really is. Forgiveness, what it truly is not giving a shit anymore. Not holding on to something. It's like if say for example, like say for example, you get into an argument with someone about something, and one day you see them 5 years later, and you say, you know what? I know we're supposed to be arguing or something. I know we had some kind of disagreement, but I can't even remember what the hell it is.
Yeah,
I don't care. Can we just get past this? That's forgiveness. Like ceasing holding on to things.
Right.
It's not about being a better person even. It's about releasing, just releasing and stop hanging on to things and stop reliving them and stop rehashing them and going over them again and again in your mind. It's just letting go.
And who did that need to be bestowed to the most? And who were there's all the demons in Tibetan Buddhism that you see in the drawings, and then they're mind states that just represent what happens in the mind. And it's almost to scare us off from taking on anger because this is what it looks like in the body and what we host this thing in the body.
Right.
So who were the toughest people to apply this letting go forgiveness to? And were there situations or people or systems that like, the justice system?
Right. Yeah. That's a good question. I think in a certain way, I think the people that I would have been the angriest at were people that I believed all the way to the core of my heart, knew that we weren't guilty, that knew we were innocent and didn't care, that they were just going to shove us through this system and were willing to sacrifice our lives and use it for political gain, to go on and run for other positions and stuff like that. People that knew that they were doing evil and that they were willing to murder me to carry out their schemes. Those were probably the ones that were the absolute hardest. Not like the dumbasses that were just going along and didn't understand what they were doing, that they're sending 3 innocent kids to die.
Yeah.
But the ones that knew and didn't care, those were probably the ones that were the hardest.
I bet. Okay, I'm so grateful I get to ask this question, because it's a question I would ask, and it's an uncommon thing. I think most people are. Here I am, like aggrandizing myself, but as a great question asker, I'm calling myself out. But I think most people are afraid to ask certain things because they're afraid of not being able to handle whatever comes as an answer, whether it be a favorable one or an unfavorable one, so they kind of stay out of it. But I'm curious, would you trade it? Would you go back and do it any differently? Is this the you that you were always meant to be? Is this your perfected state, with room for improvement? Of course, I'm not saying, I'm not trying to put you on a thing, but is this the you that you were intended to be in your own mind, at least in your own narrative moving forward?
I don't think I ever gave that much thought, but like, I think that kind of stuff, like making a conscious decision about who I want to be and putting forth, intention towards getting there. I think that was something that occurred to me relatively late in life. But as far as changing something, this is a conversation. I actually was having this conversation with my barber like a couple of weeks ago, and because he kind of couldn't wrap his mind around it. He asked me pretty much the same thing. He was like, like, would you trade this? Would you go back and undo it? And I said, no, absolutely not. I said, if I knew the only way that I could get to the place that I am right now in my life, that I had to go through that to get to here, then yeah, I would go through that again. To be surrounded, or not even have like the blessings that I have in my life now, like the friends that I have. And I live in a beautiful place, and, I get to enjoy nature and things like that, but also just like becoming who I am as a person now. Like, I feel more content now in my 50s, even though, nothing's perfect. Nothing's ever going to be perfect in our lives. We're never going to reach a place where we're happy and content because everything is perfect physically with our bodies or with our finances or any of that kind of stuff. But I'm not seeking that. I'm not seeking this happiness and this high that comes with perfection. For me, it's just about contentment. Yeah. And I am I don't think I could be more content in my life, to be honest. And if it took going through that to get me to this place, yes, I would do it. But there's all these other blessings in addition to that, like the relationship with my wife we never would have met. Right. Or, all the experiences that I've gotten to have that I would not have had if I would not have gone through those things. I was given 10 times the amount of beauty as I was ashes.
Yeah, God, that's amazing. And, not to reformat the idea of ashes as being something beautiful from the example that you just gave even, but my teacher always says that he's like, you want to see truth? Truth is ashes. And I'm like, oh, and my imagination is just like everything you love, everything you think of as being near and dear, all will be reduced to ash someday, And that's the truth. So just like I look at the world now and, I look at the trees in front of me outside this window, and I know that there's a lot of fires in California, and these could easily be the next trees that are on fire and reduced to ash. So while they're here, of course, see them as that. And that impermanence feature of being able to see things as ash just immediately makes them come to life, and gratitude and I feel the same way about my life. I mean, I haven't had the life that you've had, but I've had my own little hells and been homeless a couple times and addicted and sexually abused and all kinds of stuff, but I wouldn't trade a thing. And I've forgiven those people, and heaven is a place on earth. It is our mind. You know, it
Heaven
can
and
be
hell
that.
both.
That's right. Exactly. Yes, that's right. And no one could tell us more about that, I feel like, than you have today. So I'm so grateful. What's the story, as I said at the beginning, what's the story now needing to be told of your life? And you have a book out, and 2 books, right? Probably, or
I'm actually, my 8th one is coming out. 8, it's coming out in September, and it's called The Alchemy of the Broken Blade. Nice. And what I've tried to do with, I consider this my magnum opus. I think this is the culmination of my life's work. It's the culmination of, or the amalgamation of everything I've learned and been through, the things that have allowed me to survive in this world. And what I try to do with those things is distill them into a format that can help anyone. You know, we live in an age, what I mean by that is we live in an age where so many people are missing purpose and meaning in their lives. Like they're looking for a plot line that runs through their lives, you know, something that is going to bring them beauty and all of these different things. And a huge part of this book is about combining Eastern and Western concepts, you know, concepts in alchemy with concepts like in Japan, Kaizen, you know, the process of making tiny little changes so that they build up and accumulate over time and lead us to a different state without trying to do everything at one time, without trying to overhaul your entire life so that you get discouraged and you're like, I can't do this. This is too much. I quit and I walk away. It's about how to find purpose and meaning in the world and then use it in a way, combining Kaizen to every single day, bring you to a state that's a tiny bit more refined and a tiny bit more purified than you were the day before. And I feel like this is everything I've learned in my life and everything that has allowed me to survive, all compressed into one small volume. It won't be out in stores until the first week of September, but you can get it, you know, pre-order it now on like Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, things like that. Yeah.
And Mitch Horowitz wrote the intro to your last book, right? He
wrote the intro to this one. This is the one that's getting to come out now. And the reason I wanted him to write the intro is if you delve into the world of Western esotericism, you like one of the things that happens for a period of time, at least, is like people's ego sort of gets exalted a little bit, you know, like, oh, I'm a teacher and I know this and I know that. Yeah. Mitch is the opposite of all of that. Somebody one time called me, I don't think they meant it as a compliment, but they called me the Bob Ross of magic. And I thought, well, I'm going to take that as a compliment anyway. And then I thought, well, if I'm the Bob Ross of magic, then Mitch Horowitz is the Mr. Rogers of magic. Because you don't ever see him talking trash about people, insulting everything he does. He tries to do it in a way where it's going to elevate people. You know, it's going to elevate your consciousness, your life, all of these things. And I thought, that's my guy. That's the guy that I want. I want his energy imprint on this.
Sweet. That's great. Yeah, I'm a fan. I mean, I've heard him on the DTFH, you know, numerous times, and that was where I first got exposed to him. And yeah, just a huge fan of the way that he shares truth. And what was I going to say? The book, Mitch. Oh, you were yesterday. Just to kind of wrap things up, it looked like you were at a Vajrayana temple.
I did, yeah. I wandered up to it. Like one of my joys in life is exploring places. You know, just going to new places and seeing what's there and looking what's there. This part of the country, the Hudson Valley, there are a ton of monasteries here, all different sorts. Yesterday, I went with Lori and a friend of ours, and we were just exploring. And we go up to this monastery, and as we're approaching the door, or as we're approaching the front of the gate, we can hear like the chanting and the horns being played, and we're like, whoa, you can kind of feel it. You can feel the density of the energy coming out of there, and we're like, let's go up here and see, what they're doing. And we could see inside the main hall, it was beautiful. There's like this giant Buddha, and there's like all of these Tibetan monks and nuns are in there, and they're chanting, and they're playing the horns and all this. And I didn't want to disturb them. So I'm just like peeking through the door, and I hear a voice behind me go, hello. And I turn around, and it's this little older Asian guy. And when I turn around, he goes, And I said, we can go in? Mm-hmm. And he goes, mm-hmm. Okay, that's a sign. And so we went in, and that was what was happening. It was like a gift. It was like something given to us.
That is wild. I mean, I'm a 20-year practicing Vajrayana Buddhist, and when we saw that yesterday, it was almost like my partner showed it to me from her Instagram feed that you were in a spot where, Padmasambhava, the figure of Vajrayana Buddhism, that was the statue in mm-hmm. front, and he's, my main deity associated with that path. And I was like, it felt like a wink to this conversation, just at least like an entryway. The conversation already started, basically.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yes.
And I felt that deeply, and we were kind of really jazzed about that, and, goosebumps and all that.
Even though it's not like my tradition, I still love it. I still see the beauty in it. I understand, it's doing the same work, and it's doing it in this incredibly beautiful way that you can appreciate, whether you're, deeply immersed in it and have taken vows, or you just come across it randomly.
Yeah, totally. I mean, but just that you would fuck around and wind up in a Vajrayana space and get ushered in and all that, like to a deity that I pray to every single day and have and give fruit and water to every single day. And then it's like my main teacher is inviting you into a ceremony just hours before we talk is just pretty wonderful. I'll just say pretty wonderful. Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It is. Dude, thank you so much, man, for taking the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
thank
for
you.
real.
This has been great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times when you're, doing podcasts or whatever, experiences are all over the map. Yeah. This has been one of my absolute favorite conversations that I've ever, to me, I felt the same way when I talked to Duncan Trussell.
Yeah.
Nice. Everything just flows, and I would do this again in a heartbeat.
Nice, man. Well, I definitely want to meet you in person whenever that can happen. And this is going to actually come out tomorrow. So I'm going to put it out right away, and I just want to thank you and Lori, and especially also Amy for connecting us in the beginning. But your story's been so inspirational, and I was to bring you a good experience on this earth when I know that really all your studies have found that you're the only one that can allow a good experience to happen because it starts in your mind and it's allowed in your mind. But to present you something that you could feel that way about in this lifetime after everything you've been through means the absolute world to me. So thank you. And I will work on I'd like to work on a friendship with you.
Absolutely. I am down 100%.
Right on, Damien. Okay. I'm doing fake ending now. Okay. Thank you. That's the fake ending. Okay. Dude. So happy to meet you, man.
Same here.
So happy.